How many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to 14P Fantasy. I am your host, Justin Wright. Today, we are talking a little bit of dynasty strategy. Specifically, what the hell do you do with your rookie wide receiver that you just drafted that underperformed? And by underperformed, I'm putting that mark at, 500 yards. 500 yards basically means, they were involved in the offense. They were a key part, really, of what that team was doing offensively, or at least trying to do. If they're coming in under 500 yards, whether, it be because they just didn't perform, they were injured a bunch, they saw their role morph and change, whatever it is. These guys did not live up to expectations, most likely. We're going to specifically be talking about guys drafted rounds 1 to 3 that did not hit that 500-yard mark. So before we get into it, remember, check out the Patreon page, guys. 14 personnel, patreon.com/14P fantasy for the direct link. Over there, you'll get, if you sign up, we will break down one of your dynasty teams, giving you trade advice, free agent advice, how to value players on your own team that maybe you should move on from. On top of that, we have dynasty rankings, we have rookie rankings, both tiered. So that's huge, obviously. Tiers over linear rankings always, if you can find them. On top of that, when we get to the season, we'll have values, busts, a whole bunch of pre-draft stuff, as well as in-season content. So check out the Patreon page. Also, if you like what we're doing, myself, Marco, maybe a new team member coming shortly. If you like what we're doing, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, do all that kind of basic stuff. We appreciate it. It helps us grow. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into the numbers. So, receivers under 500 yards in year one. Then let me be clear. This is from 2011 to 2020. There were 72 guys, 72 wideouts that did not top 500 yards with that type of draft capital. We're excluding the current rookie class because, again, we don't know what they're going to do year two. That's what we're trying to figure out. So, again, we have a 10-year sample, a pretty hefty margin. Let's take a look. What these wide receivers did year two of that 72. The number of guys that topped 750 yards year two basically made a large leap or broke out in a sense in terms of fantasy. There were only 6 of them. 6 of that 72. You're looking at about 8-9% of guys that just flop for whatever reason. Nobody was excluded. There was no games played type of mark set in there. Well, there was injury or not. 6 of them came back year two and really kind of balled out, increased their value. The reason I set it at 750 yards, that's typically putting you around, 175 fantasy points. You're into wide receiver 3 territory. You're going to play consistently. So that's, I think, the key there is those are players that increase their dynasty value. If a guy comes out, puts up 200 yards in year one and puts up 500 in year two, you're not seeing returns on that player. People aren't going to start losing their mind unless it's, Gabe Davis, who put up another 500-yard season. Guys typically won't increase their dynasty value. You need to see exponential growth, really. And if you go from sub 5 to over 750, that to me is exponential growth. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm trying to predict these guys that are, at least on track to have good careers. So when you look at these 6 guys, and it's important to look at the specific 6, we are looking at Van Jefferson, who just did it this season. You're looking at Kenny Golladay, Corey Davis, DJ Chark, Randall Cobb, Alshon Jeffrey. So the group that has actually bounced back year two went on to, for the most part, have solid careers. Alshon Jeffrey was a very good contributor for fantasy for several seasons. Randall Cobb as well. DJ Chark remains to be seen. Personally, I think we've seen the best from him. Free agency could change that. Corey Davis, he's super average. That's the best way to put it. Kenny Golladay, the same thing. Again, kind of a flash in the pan, it seems. Maybe he pans out. I don't buy it with him. Corey Davis, DJ Chark, I don't think those 3 are really going to do a whole lot. And then Van Jefferson is another guy that I think is being overdrafted, is probably going to end up being a good or solid fantasy wide receiver 3, basically his entire career. that's fine. But I'm not losing my mind over the hype on him after, being the 6th wide receiver in 10 years to enter this group. But the point is, these are all guys that have had good but not great careers. So even if players do bounce back, at least right now, the indicator has not been, okay, they're now on to superstardom. We have not seen that. So again, 6 guys out of 72, you're looking at 8-9%, actually make a leap in year 2. Now, if we kind of change what we're looking for, if we're looking for 150 fantasy points, this right now basically gets you a top 40 wide receiver. Obviously, all 6 of those guys are included in this group. But the 3 that get added, it's not a whole lot better. It's Zay Jones, Devontae Parker, and honestly, the third one escapes me, but it's nobody that matters. That's really the takeaway from this. Again, Devontae Parker, super average career. Zay Jones, probably a little bit less than average. These guys that flop year 1 just have not gone on to put up, monster fantasy numbers. Again, your fantasy, especially in Dynasty, it's less about identifying talent and more about playing the market as well as playing the odds. Right now, the odds are not in your favor if you are banking on these year 2 wide receivers that didn't do anything really to break out. So I don't have a slide for it, but let's just talk through the guys this season that fit the draft capital and fit the yardage marker of under 500. You have Kadarius Toney. In all reality, he would have topped 500 yards had he played 16 games. Nico Collins, another guy on this list, under 500 yards, would have topped it if he played 16 games. So those 2 are interesting for sure. The other list, though, Josh Palmer, who I am still partial to, Amari Rodgers, Terrace Marshall, Rondale Moore, Diami Brown, Anthony Schwartz, Dwayne Eskridge, Tutu Atwell. Those last were really injury-based. But still, it is a list of guys that people are starting to hype up again in the offseason. Rondale Moore is going to be expensive. Terrace Marshall is going to be expensive. Those are 2 guys. If I have them, I am trading them for anything. Terrace Marshall, you probably can get him for a 3rd-round pick, or you can probably ship him out for a 3rd-rounder. That's great. In startups, he is a top 50 wide receiver, which is crazy, depending on where you look at ADP. I don't understand that. And then Rondale Moore, a guy that people love the talent, love the skill set, but the average depth of target issues followed him. He's a player. If I can flip him for a second, I am doing that. No hesitation. I do not care that Christian Kirk's gone and AJ Green's doesn't matter. I don't think Rondale Moore is a very good player for fantasy. For fantasy, he's a fine real life NFL player. But this list of guys, these are the dudes. If you want to bet on 1, bet on 2, maybe go ahead. It's most likely not going to pan out. But if you are banking on several of these guys to break out and buck the odds and be an outlier, I just think that's a dangerous game. Again, there's always going to be outliers. This is not a 100% tried and true method, obviously. But again, more often than not, these types of dudes just do not pan out for fantasy. So if you have them, I'm happy to move every single one of these guys off my roster. All right, that's all I have for you. Again, if you got questions, concerns, comments, anything else kind of asking about this breakdown here, drop it below. Happy to answer your guys' questions. Again, Patreon, YouTube, all that stuff. If you like what we're doing, check those out. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on with both. All right, as always, guys, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.
How many snaps did they run in the 14 personnel?
That's only for us.
100% of the snaps.